Okay, the last thing that we want to be able to do in this section is use our calculator, to rely on our calculator to do some of the things that it does well, along with some of the things that the human brain does well. And that has to do with finding the zeros. We still want to be able to find the zeros, but we're going to use our calculator to help us with that. And then also find the minimum and the maximum of these things. And I'll show you what that is. Okay, so here's what our brain can do well. We know that this needs to have 4 zeros in it somehow. Now I could, so what that means is 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that. So it's gonna go through that. And since this was positive, I know that it's gonna finish up. And since it's an even kind, that means it's gonna have the same kind of tail behavior. So it's gonna go through these things something like that. So I've got a positive shape, that's a 4th power kind of look with 4 possible zeros. Now some of these zeros, they might not be here, they might be up there, so those might have been imaginary and it just has 2 real ones, and you know, could be shifted. They could be shifted all the way up. So it looks like this, so all 4 zeros could be imaginary, so we'll let our calculator help us with that. The fastest way is to have our calculator help us with that. If we didn't have a calculator, we could factor it, we could do all of those other things that we've been doing to look for them. Okay, here's what a relative minimum. So here's a maximum. There is no maximum overall because it's going up forever. So the maximum and minimum mean how tall it is, what's the highest possible height this has. Well, that's infinity. So these are called relative. That means what's the highest peak of all of them. So right here, that's the highest it gets in this section. That's a relative maximum. Right here is a dip. That's a relative minimum. And right here's another dip. That's a relative minimum. So we want to find those points. So this particular shape would have a maximum and 2 minimums and no zeros. This particular shape would have a minimum, a maximum, a minimum, and 4 zeros. Or if it was shifted up, this would be the minimum, maximum, minimum with 2 zeros, and so on. So we want to find all of those things. Okay. This goes from, one other thing I know in my head, this goes from positive to negative. That's 1 sign change. Negative to negative, and then negative to positive. That's 2 sign changes. 2 of the zeros are going to be positive. That means there's 2 of them probably over here. So we don't really have to care about that, but I just wanted to remind you that that's one of the possibilities. Okay, so I'm not even going to do any of this in my head. I'm going to let my calculator assist me with all of it. Well, first of all, that means I got to be able to have a calculator. You should have one by now, and we need to be good at running this thing. So I'm going to type in x to the 4th minus 3x to the 2nd minus 2x plus 2. Okay, I'm not sure where that's going to go, so first I'm going to hit zoom and just go to standard to try to get it on the 10 by 10 by 10 by 10 grid. See if it shows up there at all. Okay, so for this particular one, the whole thing is showing up there. There is a minimum, there is a maximum, there's a minimum, there's a 0, and there's a 0. And notice the 2 zeros are positive, just like I was anticipating because of the 2 sign changes. Okay, I'm actually going to zoom out a little bit. Notice that all of the interesting stuff is happening like between -5 and +5. There's really no need to go out to 10. So I'm going to make the x-axis go from -5 to +5. You don't have to do that, but you'll see it helps widen it out a little bit, and I might be able to see some of that a little bit better. So there is a maximum right there. It is making a bump up. There's a minimum, a maximum, a minimum, a 0, and a 0. It doesn't matter which one you find first, so I think I'll go ahead and find the zeros first. That's this point right here and that point right there. So second, calculate a 0. Now since you can see it, it's just telling you go to the left of it. So the bug is right there, it's already to the left, so I'll hit enter. Now I gotta move the bug to the right. So right there's the 0, so now I'm to the right, hit enter, it'll search between there and find it. So that 0 is at 0.568. So here's one of those. I think I'm gonna go ahead and sketch this a little bit, what it looks like. Gonna exaggerate some of this just a little bit. Okay, so that point right there is 0.568. Okay, now I'm going to go find this one right here. Second, calculate another 0, go to the left. Well, I'm already to the left, so I'll hit enter. Go to the right. I think I'll just type in 1, 2, I'll type in the number 3 there. Seems faster than moving the bug, so it's going to search between there. Hit enter. That 0 is at 1.87. So this dot right here is 1.87. So there's the zeros. The zeros are at 0.568 and 1.87. Now I want to find the min max. So here's a minimum, there's a minimum, and that's going to be a maximum. I want those 3 dots. Okay, so right here is a minimum. Now you don't have, I'm sure you can see that, but I'm just gonna, for the lecture here, I push zoom box and I'm gonna bring this little zoomer down here. And I'm just gonna zoom around that just to make it obvious that there's a peak and a valley. See, there's the valley and there's the peak. That's the minimum and that's the maximum. So from here I could ask for it. So here's where you ask for it. You do second, calculate a minimum. It's the third one. And since again we can see it, it's right there. It's just telling you get the bug to the left of where it's obvious it is. So get it obviously to the left of that low point. And then get it obviously to the right of that low point. And then it will search between there and show you the smallest value. So that's at -1, 2. So that dot right there is a minimum at -1, 2. Okay, I'm going to zoom back out to normal again, because you probably wouldn't zoom in there, and I'll put my window back to -5 to 5 just so it's easy to see. So see, had I done it from this view, I would have said second, calculate a minimum, and it get obviously to the left. Okay, I'll get obviously to the left. And then get obviously to the right, but don't go past the next peak. So you got to get in between there. Don't go too far. Get to the right, but don't go get past the next answer. And there it should say the same thing, -1, 2. So now I'm just going to go second, calculate. Now I'll get the maximum right next to it. I'll get this point right here. Okay, so I want a maximum. That's right there somewhere. So it says get obviously to the left. Okay, I'm already to the left. Get obviously to the right. Okay, now I'm obviously to the right. It'll search between there and give us the highest point. So that highest point is -366 at 235. So that point is at -0.37 and 2.35. And then we'll do one more for that minimum right there. So that's obviously right here on the picture. Second, calculate a minimum. Get to the left of that minimum. So anywhere really. Get to the right of that minimum. Anywhere to the right. It'll search between those two. And this point now right there is at 137, -285. Okay, so I've got a relative min. Have 2 of them at -1, 2, and another one at 137, -285. And then I have a relative max at -37, 235. And that's what we're looking for, the general sketch and then those zeros. And the min-max. Okay, so number 2, I already know that there's going to be 5 total zeros. Now, I just want to show you some things to look forward to. If we were doing this by hand, we would factor out an x to the third, and that would have left an x to the second -2, and we could get these by hand. This equals 0. okay, well that means x equals, taking the third root gives us 0. But what that really means is there's 3 of them there. And then this one over here will have x squared minus 2 equals 0. Move the 2 to the other side, and then take the square root is plus and minus the square root of 2. So those are going to happen at 1.57. Now let me show you just a little idea of what happens when there's 3 of them in one spot. Sometimes, this is a thinking bubble now, sometimes you have something like this, where you have x squared equals 0. So you get 2 of them. You get x equals 0 and x equals 0. You get it there twice. That's called a double. When you have a double root, it means it bounces off there. It would come into it, like over here, you come into it and it goes right through. Okay, it's going to bounce off of doubles. When there's a double there, it bounces off of them. When there's 3 things, like what we have here, we have 3 zeros at the same spot. It's really like this. See, it counts as 3 of them here and then 2 more for a grand total of 5. Well, what happens when you have 3 of them is it comes in there and it starts to bounce, so it gets flat, but then it goes through. It gets tangent there. Tangent means it gets flat right at the 0. So it comes in, it gets flat, and then goes through. So all odds look like tangents. So you could have 5 zeros in one spot, you could have 7 zeros in one spot, and all evens, you could have 4, look like this. So if it's an even all in the same spot, if there's 2 answers in the same spot, it bounces off of there. If there's 3 answers in the same spot, it becomes flat and then goes through. And then of course, if there's just one answer there, like x equals the square root of 2, it's just going to cross through the square, and then there's another x equals negative square root of 2. It's going to just go through it and go through it. So singles just go through. Singles pass through, doubles bounce, triples. See, it's kind of like a combination between a single and a double. It almost bounces, but then it passes through. Okay, so I'm anticipating right here it to flatten out right at 0. I am anticipating this. Square root of 2 is 1.4. It's going to cross at 1.4. It's going to cross at negative 1.4, and then it's going to hit the 0 3 times. It's a 5th power. It's positive. It means it's going to finish up. So it's going to go through this one, almost bounce, but flatten out and go through there because that was a triple, and then it's going to go through that one. That's what I'm expecting. I'm expecting a max right there. I'm expecting a min right there, and a 0 and 3 0. I already know what the zeros are. They're square root of 2, they're negative square root of 2, and 0. So I can already tell you the zeros. The zeros are at plus and minus the square root of 2. That's 2 of them. And then also at 0. So there's really 5 of them. There just happens to be 3 there, but you don't have to write it down 3 times. So really all I need is the min and the max. Well, let's put it in our calculator and see. So I've got x to the 5th minus 2x to the 3rd. I'm going to go zoom standard to get started. Okay, it looks exactly how I drew it. So I'm gonna, again, we don't need to be all the way x10 and y and x negative 10. I'm gonna make it maybe go negative 4 to 4. That'll help maybe see some of that, because all the interesting stuff was happening right in here. There's the max, there's the min, there's the 0, there's the 0, and there's the 0. Now I'm even gonna box it in more. I hit zoom box. I'm just gonna make it really emphasize. So I'm just gonna zoom around these things that are important. Now really, so that's really what I wanna see right there. So there's the 0. See, here it comes flat, touches that 0, and there's the minimum. And so I already know this is the square root of 2, but I could prove it. So second, calculate a 0. If I go to the left of that side, I'll just type it in 1, 2. I'll say 2. Uh-oh. 1, 2. I thought that was okay. Never mind. I'll just move the cursor. Okay, get to the left. I don't know why it didn't like 2. Oh, because that's 2 right there. It's it. No, that's only 1 probably, because this goes to 1.7. That was why. So that was 1, and that's a little more than 1. No sign change. Okay, did you see what I did? It was asking me to go to the left, and I picked somewhere over here. Okay, I'll do that again. Then it said go to the right, and I didn't get past the 0. I want a 0. I've got to get to the right of the 0. See, really what it does, what the calculator does, is it tests everything over here, and it noticed they were all negative, and then what tests one and it notices it's positive, it gives me the answer right between the negative one and the positive one, because that must be the closest one to 0. So when I put my left bound here and my right bound here, they were all negative. It knew it never crossed 0. That's why it said no sign change. But now it will. There's the 1.4. That's the square root of 2. So I already have that one. Second, calculate a 0. I'm going to see that it shows me that 0 right there. Let me get to the left of that 0, 0 spot. I know 0, 0 is one of them. So there I'm obviously to the left. Here I'm obviously to the right. And it should show me 0, 0, or really close to 0, 0. It might estimate it now. Let's see. Wow, it's having a hard time because these were so close. Okay, see it says 0 right there, and that looks kind of weird. It's in scientific notation. That's -6 times 10 to the -34. We're rounding that to 0. Times 10 to the -34. That means there's 33 zeros in front of that. That's 0.000033 times 683. That's just rounding to 0. That's 0, 0. Okay, so we already knew those though because we did it by hand. It was faster to do by hand than by calculator anyway. So now I'll go ahead and get this max right there. Second, calculate the max. Again, I just have to be to the left of it. I'm not sure what we're counting by here, so I think I'll just let the bug go to the obvious left. So I need to obviously be to the left, hit enter, obviously be to the right, hit enter, and it will find the maximum point. So negative 1.10 and 1.05. So there's that point right there. And then the minimum, I'll do it in the exact same way. I need that one right there. This looks very symmetric to me. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the same digits, only the other way around. So I'm just moving over to the left of this one. That's already to the left. I could hit enter anywhere. I just need to get to the right. Okay, so now I'm to the right of that one and hit enter, and it will find the smallest value between those two spots. Yeah, positive 1.10 and negative 1.05. So the min is at 1.10, negative 1.05. See, it means the minimum y, the minimum depth. And then the max is the highest point. So that was negative 1.10 and positive 1.05. That's the tallest it got in between there. Okay, that's using your calculator to find all of those things. And in calculus, you do that all the time because we're interested in speed, not necessarily doing all of these processes by hand.